Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by Peter Baracchini and Dayton Reimer. Also got Chase Beardsley here. We're going to be doing our annual draft recap, reaction, all that fun stuff. And Chase was at the draft, so I thought it'd be good to have him on for this episode as well. Chase, how's it going?
It's going good. I can't complain, right now in Utah, it's beautiful outside, so can't complain.
Yeah, it's nice here too, so it's probably not as warm as I would guarantee that probably for sure. Dayton, how's it going?
It's pretty good. A little warm in Saskatoon, I'd say, but no, it's still doing a lot of free agency and wrapping up some draft stuff. Looking forward to the 2026 draft. The machine never stops, and it's great.
Sure. And Peter, how's it going? I know you're already starting your prep for the 2026 draft, where you got to keep going. It doesn't stop. The train doesn't stop.
Yeah, it doesn't stop at all. We're already in the early portions of doing my way too early top 32 with the top 16 reports on my top 16 guys. So yeah, already starting that. And yeah, I'm just going to say this, 2026 is going to shape up to be a really fun year, especially in that top 10. A lot of exciting talent.
Yeah, I was already looking at it and I'm like, my gosh, it's not saying this draft didn't have talent, but yeah, next year's is going to be a pretty stacked first round. I think we already know, well, pretty much the first overall pick is probably going to be Gavin McKenna, as we're already I would think, but that's for another episode. We're still on the 2025 draft, and we're going to wrap it up here and put a bow on it all. Of course, we'll be talking about it throughout the season as well, checking up on the 2025 draft class. But let's start in the first round. And I know, Dayton, we already know what your thoughts on the first round were, so I don't know if I want you repeating anything unless you had something else, but I'll start with you, Peter. Surprises in the first round. I mean, there were a few, of course, the first overall pick, we knew it was Matthew Schaefer. It ended up being that. I mean, I'd say the top three were pretty much, we kind of knew. It started changing after that, but throughout the first round, any surprising picks that you kind of saw?
I wouldn't consider this like a massive surprise, but seeing Porter Martone drop a tad bit, given the center talent that was available in terms of Caleb Desnoyers and Brady Martin, highly competitive centermen with, Desnoyers going to Utah. Chase, I thought that was a good pick because I had him third overall. I thought that was a really good get for the Mammoth. Brady Martin, it kind of felt like, there was talk that Martin would go to Utah, but then again, he would be in that 4 to 7 range. So it makes all the world of the sense to select him there. But Martone falling down because of that center depth, because of Frondell and the other two guys that I mentioned. I mean, it makes sense for Philly because he does fit that mold as being that rugged power forward, drives hard to the net, has that skill, can complement a lot of players that are already in their system right now. So a little bit surprised that he would fall outside the top 5. A lot of people did have him in the top 5 anyways, but one spot down, slight surprise. But an even bigger one would be Jack Nesbitt jumping up to 12 for the Philadelphia Flyers. A lot of people probably had him towards the tail end of that first round. A lot of unknowns because of the fact that, he was a great secondary scorer behind the likes of Liam Greentree and Ilya Protas. But now I think there's that little bit of a bet where they can see a little bit of a progression from him. He's got that size. He's got the power forward build, crashes hard to the net, has a strong two-way game, basically fits them, again, kind of like Martone, fits that rugged style and mix of skill that they want to go down with. So kind of a bit of a reach. Maybe if they could have traded down a little bit further, they could have used that pick to do that. So a little bit of surprise to see him in the top 15, considering that he was maybe a 28 to 32 pick.
Yeah, I know. Martone's a definite one. I mean, we were talking about him in the top 5 at times, and it always changes with what teams want and what teams feel that they're going to get. And Martone going, I'd say when you say Flyers, I'm like, yeah, that fits. All right, he does fit the team, right? So I think he's going to have a really good. I would think a career there. So we'll have to wait and see. Chase, what about you for the first round? I know Utah, I don't know if they went off the board with who they picked. I mean, Desnoyers, he was supposed to be in that range. What do you think about surprises in the first round?
Yeah, I don't know if Desnoyers was a big surprise, since I think we kind of knew and expected he would go like from the range of 3 to 5. It's somewhere in there, and he ends up in Utah. I think that's a fantastic pick. They just held their development camp this week, and he's looked fantastic, very confident. So we'll see where that goes. But in terms of surprises, I think kind of leaning off what Peter said about Martone. Since Martone dropped, James Haggins also dropped because Brady Martin went so high. So getting James Haggins at 7 for Boston, that's a great pickup for them. I'm surprised he went that low, but I think with Brady Martin going that high, you had the supposed like fall offs as well. I'm surprised the Sharks took a goaltender with Joshua Ravensburger, and the fact that they have Askarov already there. So I was a bit surprised, they took a goaltender, but he's supposed to be one of the best goaltenders, if not the best goaltender in this draft. I'm surprised the Islanders got Victor Eklund. That was a nice pickup for them. I'm sure we'll talk about the Islanders a lot in this video, but the fact that they managed to get Eklund that low is a surprise. I thought he would go higher. And I think the other one was Colin Potter going at 32. I personally expected him to go around 26, and the fact that he dropped to 32 is pretty good for the Flames. I watched this guy at ASU. He's got some of the sickest hands, I think, in the NCAA. He's got the speed. There is stuff to work on, obviously, and I think you can say that with every single prospect that win this draft. But I think that's a great pickup for Calgary, and if he can put it all together in his next year at ASU, I think that could be a really solid pickup at 32.
Colin Potter, I mean, we were talking about, of course, Dayton named him the top skater in this draft class. So him going in the first round, we were kind of talking that he probably would, but he almost didn't. I mean, like you said, 32nd overall. We're like, why hasn't he been picked yet? And Calgary got a great pick there. They've been making some really good picks lately. I mean, Matt Coronado a few years ago, looking at I'd say that one is a pretty big success story, looking at him, what he's doing in the NHL now. And I think very warranted where he went in the draft. He was a high pick, but I mean, Potter could definitely be a really good pick in the future too, with how much speed is in the NHL, right? So he could definitely maybe a bit of a steal. We'll talk about those later on too. But a first round, maybe not tons of surprises, but there were some kind of guys that were dropped a little. So let's talk about that next. Biggest risers and fallers. I'll start with you, Dayton. Who do you feel was the biggest? We'll start with the rise. Well, maybe just one or two of each. A big riser and a big faller for you in the entire draft, not just in the first round.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with a first rounder. Pyotr Andrianov was I think a massive riser. Mark Scheig on Twitter talked about how the Blue Jackets really loved him when they met him. Like, it was kind of a, for lack of a better term, love at first sight. And it was almost like destiny that they were going to take him with their first round pick. He wasn't projected to be a first round pick, though. Barely a second round pick for some of the lists I was looking at. So to have him jump up so far and be the first goaltender taken, I think is a massive rise for him. The second one is Charlie Serrato, who went in the second round to the Carolina Hurricanes. And I think it's a solid pick. I like Serrato. He had some interesting skills heading into the draft. I don't believe I ranked him in my top 96, though, because he is a 20-year-old and he is playing, he has a 20-year-old frame and playing in the NCAA. He is still a freshman, still performing quite well. But I thought second overall pick, that was second round pick. I thought that was quite surprising for a player like that.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, of course, the Hurricanes, I don't know if you want to ever critique what they do in the draft, because they seem to hit on all these guys. So he's probably going to be a pretty good NHL player. So, but we'll see. Peter, what about you for risers and fallers in this draft class? I mean, we saw, I guess maybe the first round didn't see a ton of them, but as we started going through the next few rounds, we started seeing some guys like Cam Schmidt was one for me. Because I was like, when is he going to get picked? I mean, it was starting to go towards the third round, and he still wasn't picked. And of course, Dallas Stars goes for him. I mean, they have experience drafting guys that got Logan Stankoven. The biggest success story there, of course, not a Dallas Star anymore, a Hurricane, which he also fits there. But anyone that you feel was a riser faller in this class?
Yeah, I think we kind of expected this with William Horkoff with the way that he tested at the combine. I thought like there was going to be a team to take a swing on him. Lo and behold, it was the Pittsburgh Penguins. Must have done something right in order to get their attention. He's got that winning mindset, two-way game, very, very competitive. So maybe kind of a bit of a strange direction because the way Kyle Dubas ran the draft with the Maple Leafs was a little bit different what he's doing right now with the Penguins. So to see that change in mentality, great breath of fresh air. Can't go wrong with Horikoff, and there was the expectation that he would rise up. I'm going to say this in the sense that there was a little bit of hope that he would stay in that area, but I would hope he would fall to the Maple Leafs and Carter Amico. And because of that injury, there was a sense that he could either be a first rounder, early second, or he could fall right off. And I thought getting Amico from the Flyers at 38 was a really good pickup. Kind of fits in that whole entire range where, I if he was falling, that's the perfect medium for me right there. I wish he would have fallen a little bit more, that I could have talked about him with the Leafs, but unfortunately not. But in terms of other fallers, I am going to say the New York Islanders getting two of them, 16 with Victor Eklund, and I believe 74 with Luca Romano. Eklund was supposed to be a top 10 pick, fell past the top 15. That's just money for them right there after they made that trade with the Montreal Canadiens to get Noah Dobson. And Luca Romano was probably a mid-second rounder, and he fell to the early part of the third. Really heavy shot, really great compete level, great skater. So to get those two players late in the first and early third, I thought those were really, really good pickups for them in terms of building up their prospect pool because they really need them. And, they got a lot of guys with upside, and Eklund and Romano definitely fit that bill for them.
Yeah, well, Eklund was a guy that were like, he was dropping, and then he's where the Canucks would pick. And I'm like, they're picking Eklund because Swedish guy. They didn't. They picked Braden Coots, and I was like, yes, that's great too. Everyone knows I love him. So but I was really thinking that Eklund was going to be that pick because, I mean, the history of the Canucks picking Swedish players is pretty well documented. I thought the Red Wings were going to pick him, and they went for Carter Bear, which, I mean, that's not bad either. I mean, he's a great pick too. So Eklund falling to the Islanders, that's a pretty big one. And then, of course, getting Kishan Aitchison as well, which is a pretty big one. Their draft, I mean, I'm maybe jumping the gun. We're going to talk about favorite draft classes later on here. But Chase, what about you for biggest risers and fallers that hopefully no one stole them? So I them probably already here.
I think the biggest faller for me was by far LJ Mooney. He was projected to go either in the second or third round, and he ends up going all the way in the fifth round to Montreal. I think that's such a steal for them. We know they love their undersized players too, so he's going to develop well there. I know Utah, he was on the radar, obviously being Logan Cooley's cousin, but they just didn't pick him. But yeah, because he's undersized, that's probably why he fell so low. But yeah, that could be a solid pickup for Montreal. I thought Blake Fiddler going to Seattle was a bit of a fall. I think, after the combine, maybe some of us expected it, but it was a surprise that he fell that low. Someone I was really intrigued by was Mason West. I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit, you know, his whole situation with football and which is he going to commit to. I think that's a big swing for Chicago. If it pays off, it should be really interesting. If it doesn't, I mean, they have plenty of first-round picks to choose from, so not that big of a stress. But one that really stuck out to me that I know a lot of maybe Mammoth fans and prospect fans alike are very confused about is Mammoth selecting Ivan Tachenko with their 5th round pick. He needs a lot of work, it sounds like. We've been looking at him during development camp, and it just feels like it's going to be quite a while before he even gets a crack at the NHL. He has a lot of development to do. Not sure if that's someone they should have picked in the 5th round, especially because LJ Mooney was still on the board when they got this guy, and especially when they have plenty of goaltending to not worry about selecting their goaltender. But that was an interesting pick in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there was a few. I mean, Ivan Rabkin, we were kind of talking about him being a guy that could fall, and he did. But the Hurricanes, maybe not a surprising team to take a swing on him. I mean, they're good. They've been good with picking Russian players. Alexander Nikishin was a guy that he was in the KHL a little longer, and everyone thought, well, maybe he won't come over. He ended up doing, and he's actually looked pretty good. I mean, he was only played a handful of games in the playoffs there, but he's starting to look like a good pick there, and he was picked later on in the draft too. I'm pretty sure it was like 5th or 6th round. So I mean, he's one of their top prospects now. And then Rabkin, we've talked about him being a guy that maybe has some question marks about him, but it's a good swing from where they picked him. And he did fall because he was talked about as being a sure 1st rounder not that long ago. And now he could potentially be a steal for the Hurricanes. Go figure. I mean, they seem to do that a lot. All right, let's talk about some draft classes now. And I'll start with you, Peter. Who was your what was your favorite draft class? You might have a few, but overall, when looking at the entire class, what was your favorite?
No doubt the New York Islanders. They needed to come in, or they got the 1st overall pick. They needed to come in. They needed to make a splash. You got the best defender, Matthew Schaefer, with a lot of upside. Again, he only played minimal games, but you know what you're getting with him. Very, very composed nature of a player at such a young age. To have him come in, and he's got a mindset where he doesn't even want to go back to junior. He wants to make the NHL. So that shows where the commitment lies for him. I would think maybe going back to junior, getting a full season under his belt would be the best thing because of the injury history. But to have that mindset, to have that mentality on and off the ice really shows his true nature as a prospect. Victor Eklund at 16, and then Keishon Aitchison. You got one of the best forwards that had fallen out as a result. You got one of the more competitive, fierce defenders in Aitchison, who's been a real clutch goal scorer in the OHL. As a defender, I really like the Prokhorov pick. Kind of that throwback, power forward where he has a bit of a mean streak, but a heck of a shot. I talked about Luca Romano, even the Thomas Politan pick. I thought that was really great value at, the 106 overall in the 4th round for them. So yeah, they needed to have a big draft. Their prospect pool was very bare, as I mentioned, and they stockpiled on it with a lot of quality and a lot of talent.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, just adding those 2 first rounders in the Dobson trade really helped them out. I mean, they were going to have a strong class just having Matthew Schaefer, but adding those 2 other guys where, Aitchison's going to be a top 4 defenseman, potentially more, we don't know. And then Eklund could potentially be a top 6, maybe even a top line guy. That's a pretty solid 1st round for a team that we've talked about it many times of how weak their prospect pool is. Not so much now. I mean, they're actually boosted quite a bit. It'd be interesting to see where they go in the farm system rankings next, how much they fly up the rankings, which I think they probably will, for sure. All right, Dayton, is the Islanders your favorite? Or are you going to kind of change it up? What's your favorite class?
Well, there's no question that the Islanders had a fantastic draft class. But I think one of my favorites was the Calgary Flames. I thought they nailed it with almost all of their picks. They got Cole Reshny 18th overall. I thought he could have gone higher. He's a very highly intelligent player. And then they added another highly intelligent, super speedy forward in Cullen Potter, 32nd overall, who shouldn't have been there. And the Flames were very smart to grab him. 2nd round, they got Theo Stuxelius. He's a really good prospect, got some interesting upside. 3rd round, Matteo Phillips, a big big defenseman, 6'6", 234 pounds already. And he looked pretty solid. Then some later guys, Ethan Wittenbach, Aiden Lane, Jacob Leander, Jan Matveyko. Some good swings on those guys. Not as well known, but just a really solid class. And they, I think, really boosted their prospect pool. Got a lot of high talent that probably are going to push for roster spots here sooner rather than later.
I mean, the Flames don't have a really weak pool, but they don't have the strongest here. They're probably in the middle. And and they add some really good skill guys and fast guys too, and big guys. So, I mean, maybe a mix of guys.
It's just such a well-rounded group. I don't know. I thought they kind of just addressed everything that they needed to by also not compromising on targeting position over best player available.
Yeah, and they had 2 first-rounders as well. So, I mean, that really helps. And 2 really overall solid class for sure. Chase, what about you for a favorite draft class? I mean, Utah had a really good, I would say a pretty good class too, but you'll talk about that later. Unless you pick them as their favorite, but I'll let you go. Who do you got?
Yeah, we'll talk about Utah later. They were one of my favorites, being non-biased, but they weren't my favorite. Obviously, my favorite, the Islanders. I mean, come on. That was an insane draft class by Ducharme. But I do like what the San Jose Sharks did. They get Michael Misa, 2nd overall, add to that elite group of forwards that they have building up. So Brini, Smith, Eklund, you can keep going on and on. I do like them getting that goaltender, Joshua Ravensburger, even though it's a surprise because they have Askarov. Now they have 2 elite goaltenders there. If he pans out in the 2nd round, they get Simon Wang, who could be really good. He's a big defenseman. He could add to that, again, a really elite group of blue liners that they have building up, like Sam Dickinson and Luca Cagnoni. I like what they did with their later round picks too. Cole McKinney could be a really underrated pick. I like what they did with their 4th rounder and Ilyas. I'm gonna butcher his last name, but Magno Desnoov. I butchered that completely, but I liked what he did this past season. I think that's a great underrated pick in the 4th round, kind of like what they had in Cagnoni last year. So, I think they had a really smart draft class. Michael Misa is the top, cream of the crop, like in terms of their class, but they had a lot of bangers, especially in the later round picks. I liked what the Sharks did.
Yeah, I mean, the Sharks, of course, when you get the 2nd best, not maybe I would say the top forward for sure, and Michael Misa, it does boost it. But yeah, some of the guys that they got later on, Ravensburg, I mean, you got 2 elite blue chip goaltenders in your system. Potentially be a tandem down the road. I mean, I think that's what the NHL's shifting to. You need 2 really good goalies. You can't just have one. And that they already set up with those 2 guys for sure. The Sharks have had a good class, a good draft as well. All right. Well, when we talk about the favorite, we got to talk about the ones that are not that good. And that's the underwhelming ones. I mean, there are some, of course, teams that didn't have a lot of picks, like the Florida Panthers. I mean, they won the cup, so whatever. They're not going to have a lot of draft picks. But Dayton, what about underwhelming classes? Ones that you're kind of like, well, I'm not sure why they picked that guy there. Overall, what maybe a bit disappointing.
Yeah, there were a few. Before I mention that, though, Magomed Sultanov. What a name, right? Ilyas Magomed Sultanov.
The fact that you did that so quickly, I'm jealous.
I've practiced. Yeah, it's fantastic. There was a lot of really good names, and the Sharks ended up with a couple of them. Ravensburgen, that's another great name. Yeah, solid. Anyways, most underwhelming draft class. Sorry, Peter, it's going to be the Leafs. I was running the Hockey Writers draft tracker, and when their first pick came up, the 2nd rounder, I had to pause and think, who Like, what are you doing? There's so many guys on the board that I would take first. Probably 32 guys who went in the third round I would have taken before that guy. And I kept thinking that through most of their picks. I do think they got some talent. I do like William Bell. Harry Nancy, I think, is intriguing. Tyler Hopkins is intriguing. But I felt they always left talent on the table. They were going after very specific archetypes. They were trying to address their toughness. They were trying to address their size and compete. And that, I think, put blinders on them. And they missed out on some really, really good talent. And unfortunately, I think that's going to hurt them in a few years.
I mean, another year they don't have a first round pick. I mean, not arguably, they did hit on the Matthew Nyes one for sure. I mean, the guy that just signed a big extension as well. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, and of course, Easton Cowan's looking like a pretty good pick. He wasn't a first rounder, right?
No, he was
first rounder.
Yeah. So, I mean,
they've done really well with their first round picks. But I think your prospect pool is most benefited by later round picks. Everyone can hit on a first round pick. Sometimes you don't, but everyone can. And to, kind of counter, I guess, to support my argument, Dallas had one of my favorite draft classes. I thought they nailed a lot of their picks. They went out and grabbed some really high end guys without having a first or second round pick. Their first guy was Cameron Schmidt. Nailed that.
Well, they got a first round pick.
Sorry?
I said they had a first round pick.
Yes.
By picking Cam Schmidt, they had a first round pick.
Yes. Sorry, you threw me off there for a second. I'm racking through my brain. Where did they have their pick? They got a first round talent in the third round.
Yeah.
Like, that's exactly what you got to do. And he's like, oh, congrats. You got your next Logan Stankoven, who just signed for what, $6 million a year?
Yeah.
Like, easiest pick of the draft. And I wish some other teams could have done that.
Yeah, 100%. Chase, what about you for underwhelming classes? I mean, I hate harping on the bad ones, but we got to talk about them too.
100%. I agree with what Dane's saying. Like, some of these teams had one pick or a couple picks, and had a good draft class. I point to the Blues. I like what they drafted in Carbonneau, and they didn't have a lot of picks, but Carbonneau is a decent pickup. So going off that and what we're saying here, I think Columbus had a bit of a mixed draft. We'll see what Peter Andrianov can do, but I do like Jackson Smith. Other than that, I don't really think any of them any players that they picked could challenge for a full-time NHL job. Again, Smith's great, and we'll see what Andrianov can be. But other than that, I just didn't see a lot come out of their drafting. I thought Minnesota was interesting. The Justin Kipke pick could be interesting. He was actually a former Mammoth pick, and they let his rights expire. So we'll see if they sign him or if they can do something with him. But other than that, I didn't really like their draft class either.
I mean, we may look back at these ones that we're pegging as the underwhelming ones and say, oh, they're one of the best maybe. So I don't know. It's hard to tell, even for the ones that we really like. May end up not being very good either. So, I mean, it's really tough at this point, but this is what we have right now. Peter, I didn't go to you for underwhelming. Which ones were you kind of looking at?
Yeah, I agree with Dayton about the Leafs, but I do have a reasoning behind that, which we'll get to our full class recap later on. I am going to pick the Florida Panthers just because I'm petty like that. Even though they won the Stanley Cup, just because they knocked Toronto out. But on a more serious note, I do agree with Chase as well with the Minnesota Wild. I really thought that they went towards, they got Adam Benak, which, again, there were a lot of question marks on why he fell further down into the draft. The sizes being one, the mixed results in the USHL where the expectations were a little bit high. I was a big fan of Lyra Mamedowski and Carter Klippenstein, but they seem to be more depth pieces. With their second round pick, kind of like Toronto, they went with Theodore Halkvist. And there again, kind of like Toronto, like Dayton, there were some names that I would have gone with. I would have gone with guys like Cole McKinney, Theo Stuxelius, Jakubis Wozniak, even better depth guys like Zada and Guard. They were probably aiming a defender as well. The next one probably would have been Lassie Bullius, if that was the case, or Liam Pettersson. But this was a bit of a weaker draft class later on in terms of defenders, and I probably would have gone with a forward there. But yeah, I really do think that the Minnesota Wild didn't quite I mean, they had a good one with the picks that they had, but they could have probably made it a little bit more worthwhile.
I like the Binak pick. I mean, of course, I wrote his prospect profile. I like the undersized guys. It's a good swing where they got him. But yeah, overall, I mean, especially when you're looking back at their other draft classes on what they got last year, Steve Bouillon, that was a great pick. I mean, they've had some really good drafts the last few, and this one I can't really point to being really exciting. So, but we'll have to just wait and see on all these classes for sure. All right, let's go back to the positive and talk about favorite picks in this draft class. I mean, we've mentioned a few of them. We all know our favorites before the draft, but now looking at who they are now property of. Peter, who's your favorite pick? I mean, you didn't mention Bill Zonin, who went to the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's a pretty good one. But for like fit or anything, you could go different ways here. But who's your favorite pick?
Yeah, I feel like I've talked enough about Bill Zonin quite enough on this show where maybe I could probably step aside a little bit. But I'm kind of a little bit surprised that Dubas went with, a big power forward with size, but he also has the skill and IQ to go with it. That's never usually Dubas's moniker heading into these drafts. But I digress a little bit. I am going to say Sasha Boumediene from the Winnipeg Jets. I feel like they got a lot of talent up front with a lot of the players that they have. But they kind of feel like they're lacking a little bit of more dynamicism and mobility on the back end. And with his U18 and his strong second half with Boston College, I really thought that Boumediene really picked it up and would be a very good fit in that system. Obviously I should say Boston University, not Boston College for Boumediene. Probably not going to get to, Josh Morrissey level top pairing defender, but I think he would be a very solid 4 or 3-4 defender. Second pairing, great mobility, great awareness to attack, jump into the rush, power play kind of guy. Give him another option for the future as well. So I thought that was a really good pickup because they have, again, kind of an MO on the back end. They want to be big, they want to be heavy, but they got the size, but they got a little bit more offensive upside, and I think that's going to go well for them.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of our favorites throughout the year too, and he ended up being a first-round pick, like we were saying. He could jump into the first round. And the Jets, yeah, they got a really good one there for sure. Chase, what about you for a favorite pick?
I could go with so many. I did like Mooney in Montreal, as I've stated multiple times. A bit jealous he didn't go to Utah. I could go with Wang to San Jose because I think that's a solid defenseman. Could go with Roger McQueen to Anaheim. Could pay off in spades. But I'm going to go with an obvious one. I'm going to go with Caleb Desnoyers to Utah. I think that's just a slam dunk pick. And, Utah could have chosen a lot of different players. They could have gone with Martin, who they were rumored to pick. They could have gone with Haggins. They could have gone with anyone. But Desnoyers, after all, was probably the best pick. He has probably one of the best hockey IQs in the draft. He's super confident, which is what Utah needs. It fits well with their locker room culture, which they've been very, very proud of. He's a center, which is Utah's currently main weakness. And he'll probably be in the Utah system, up in Salt Lake City, not too long from now. I would say one more year in juniors, maybe even less than that. He's very confident in trying to make the NHL roster this year. We'll see what happens. But I think that's just a slam dunk pick by Bill Armstrong. And I just think he fits that Utah mold so well that they've been very proud of what they've built from Arizona up until now.
Yeah, I mean, Desnoyers has been he didn't have the best Memorial Cup, but whatever. But he's a guy that was always on the radar as being a top 10 pick, potentially top 5, ended up being a top 5 pick. So, I mean, that's a guy I think really does fit. Like, the culture and what they're trying to build in Utah as well. So yeah, definitely a great pick for them. Dayton, what about you for favorite picks in this draft?
Yeah, like Chase, I had a bunch. I really like Coots going to the Vancouver Canucks. He was just one of my favorite players. So anywhere he would go, he was going to be one of my favorite picks. Cullen Potter going to the Calgary Flames was really good. I really liked Eric Nilsson to the Anaheim Ducks in the second round. He was a first rounder for me. So with them grabbing him, I think that's an underrated move. Philip Ekberg to the Carolina Hurricanes.
There's another
total
one.
Hurricanes pick, yeah.
Yeah, like he was going to be a Hurricane. We just had to figure out where, right?
Yeah.
When is he going to be a Hurricanes pick, and turned out to be the 7th round. So,
Cutting a little close, though.
Yeah,
they did. Yeah, a little close for my comfort. But I think, and you guys are going to be super surprised with this one, my favorite pick was Lyndon Lakovic to the Washington Capitals. Honestly, I think that is a perfect system for him to end up on. They have taken a lot of big forwards who I believe have been misused as like, oh, you're big, so you should be a power forward. And he's not a power forward. If you try to make him a power forward, you're going to end up with a lesser product. If you let him play his game and play that high offense and really cerebral playmaking style, you're going to have a fantastic prospect. And they've done that with guys, right? They've taken Dylan Strome and let him thrive. Pierre-Luc Dubois has thrived. Jacob Chikrin looked way better when he wasn't being, pegged into the wrong hole. This is a team that knows how to use players to the best of their abilities. I mean, I don't know if Ovechkin would have been as good anywhere else where, he was allowed to kind of set up in his little spot and just fire pucks. And now he is the highest goal scoring player of all time.
Yeah.
Would another team have tried to force him into something else? Possibly, or possibly not. Tough to say right now. That's revisionist history and never really goes well. But it's just, they've had this reputation of letting players play. And Lakovic is a player who needs to play to thrive, and that's just that's going to be a really good fit for him, I think.
We've also talked about the Capitals a lot for prospects, what they got, and Andrew Cristal is another one. They're like great pick for where they got him, and I think he's going to thrive in that system as well. Cole Hudson, another one. I mean, that he's going to end up being a really good pick for them as well. I mean, there's so many that we could talk about for the Capitals, and Lakovic is just going to add to it for sure. No surprise, my favorite pick was Braden Coots to the Canucks. I mean, that's just, I talked about it on the first round recap, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but I just late, after, and his interviews afterward and what his leadership and what all his character, he's just a perfect pick. And the Canucks are going to get, I'd say, a similar guy to Bo Horvat. And even, there's been other comparisons, but he's going to end up being his own player, as they all are usually. But he just seems like going to be a future captain of the Canucks. I said that about Horvat when he was drafted too, and I could see it for Coots later on. Not putting all that pressure on him to be a captain of the Canucks, though, but he's going to end up being a really good player for the team in the future. So love the pick. And I would have liked Victor Eklund as well, but Coots, slam dunk at where they got 15. All right, let's talk about some steals. Now, we've mentioned a few players that kind of dropped into the different rounds, but Chase, I'll start with you. We'll start with the first round. These are kind of more quick fire. You don't have to go too much into them, but looking at just the first round, who are you seeing as a potential steal from it? Very early, we don't know, but where they were picked and what we kind of knew about them before. What are you seeing there?
First round, I keep capitalizing on Cullen Potter because I think I am so strong in belief that I think he should have gone way higher than 32. Again, I've seen this kid. This kid is a beast. He's speedy, got the best hands. So good, such a good player. But if I were forced to choose someone over in that, I really like where Roger McQueen ended up. I think we all expected him to drop because of the injury he sustained. And it's arguable that he would have gone way higher if he had never sustained that injury. So getting him at 10 could end up looking like a major steal for the Ducks, especially with this little core that they're building. I think that could be awesome. And plus, who wouldn't want to have Roger McQueen on their team because he is a Cars fan, all right, playing life as a highway.
Got 95.
Yeah, that's so great.
Going to 95, peak experience. All right. The McQueen experience is awesome. But yeah, I would have to say Colin Potter and Roger McQueen would be my choice in the first round.
Yeah, I think McQueen went to the perfect team. I mean, his name. Did we even mention that before? No, we didn't. Talking about that would be the perfect team for him to go to because just, yeah, we all know he was at Disney. Was it Disneyland there? I mean, yeah, perfect. Peter, what about you for potential steals for the first round?
I've already mentioned Victor Eklund too many times, so I'm going to pass on Eklund. I do agree with Colin Potter. In our mock draft, I did take Colin Potter with the Calgary Flames pick at 18. So I was technically 50% right. I did say the Flames would take him. Didn't say exactly where. But I do think that Colin Potter would be a fantastic steal. The stats don't pay no much attention to it because he was always the driving force on a middling ASU team. He was always a star player. So I feel like he should have been a little bit higher up, but I'm also going to say Cameron Reed to the Nashville Predators. I have always been high on Cameron Reed all season. He did drop for me to that 20 range, but if I were advocating for a player early on in the draft, I would be putting my name down for Cameron Reed nonstop. He was a top 10 OHL producer in terms of points. Not going to be flashy in any means necessary, but he's very smart, calculated, always makes the right play on both sides of the puck. He's a guy that I would advocate, and I think could be a steal for Nashville, especially on the back end.
Yeah, it's a good pick. I mean, Nashville had a few first-round picks as well, and I think they hit on a lot of them. And they need to really boost their prospect pool as well. So, yeah, good pick. Could potentially be a steal for sure. They're good at developing defensemen, so I think he'll probably do well. Dayton, what about you for steals for the first round?
I mean, I've talked a lot about my steals already, I guess. Love Lakovic at 27. Braden Coots, I think, could be a steal at 16. I would rank him higher than that. Colin Potter, obviously. But I think someone who could end up being quite a steal, especially if the injury isn't as bad as we all fear, is Carter Bear at 13. Before he got injured, he was a top 10 talent and was really pushing into that like top 8, top 7. And then there's the Achilles injury. Achilles injuries are just awful to come back from, and that really could hamper his development, unfortunately. If it doesn't, that's an incredible pickup from the Red Wings, and I think they were smart to use their pick on somebody who has that much talent and that much, energy and drive, and just like he checks all the boxes. So if that works out, that's going to be, I think, probably one of the better picks of the first round outside of the top 5.
I agree with that. And again, I thought they were going to pick Eklund. Every time it goes to a team, I'm like, they're going to pick him. Nope. And they picked arguably, I don't know if a better player, but we don't know. But great pick anyway. Okay, let's move to the second round, and I'll stick with you, Dayton. For potential steals in the second, I mean, there were some guys that were supposed to be in the first round and dropped into the second. Who do you feel here that could potentially be a steal? There's lots of guys that lately that have really hit as second rounders.
Yeah, I already mentioned Eric Nilsson. I think he could be a steal, but more than him, I'm looking at William Moore for the Boston Bruins, who they took him 51st. I don't know how he fell that far. This guy was potentially a fringe first round pick. He had a fantastic under 18s. He's not crazy flashy, but he is really intelligent. He's really quick. And I think there's like such a high end potential with him. But getting him at 51st Now you have no pressure, and he could really surprise in the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, really thought as the first round went on, we're like, where's this guy? Why isn't William Moore picked? And he ended up going pretty early in the second round, but I mean, maybe not. That's midway.
About halfway through.
He did drop quite a bit.
Yeah.
That's a good pick for the Bruins. Bruins actually had a pretty good draft as well for a team that, they had some high picks, but they also need to boost their prospect pool, and they did that in this one too. Peter, for the second round, what do you have for a steal?
Number 55, Vegas Golden Knights and Jakubis Wozniak. This is a guy that was supposed to be a late first, early second kind of pick. Fell further to the latter part of the second round, and I could understand why he fell. I mean, he tore up the U20 National fit with 57 points in 40 games, another 4-3 playoff games. So he dominated his age group, but there was a lot of consistency issues. There were times where he wasn't as engaged as he was supposed to. He was kind of being more of a support player instead of being a driving force at times. If he's able to find that consistency at the next level or within his development within the next few years, and he's able to produce at a high level, that's going to be a steal for the Vegas Golden Knights, unless he gets traded later on for somebody else. So for the time being, that is a really good pickup. They needed to add more depth to their system. He's an offensive producer. He can play like one. He just needs to find the consistency, but that's a great pick.
It's a great pick, and we'll see if he stays a Golden Knights prospect. That's becoming a bit of a joke, but they do it. They trade away their top prospect, and it's happened quite a few times. Chase, what about you for the rest or the second round for a steal?
I think I'm going to have to go Cole McKinney going to the Sharks. 61 points in 60 games, 27 goals with the United States Development Program. That's a pretty good stat line right there. I think he could be something. I don't know if he'll be a star or anything, but I think he could be a steal. I like how this kid plays. I think when I was at the draft, when they drafted him, a lot of people said that was a really good pickup by the Sharks. He's going to Michigan next year, so that's a good program that could really help him out. He's a good two-way center. I like what he's done with his time in the development program. I think the Sharks, especially with how deep they appear to be at the moment, with their huge prospect pool, I think that could be a very solid pickup, and I think he could fight his way through some of these other prospects that have been drafted around him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the second round usually produces NHL players, but there are quite a few lately that have been stars coming from the second round, and we could see that. I mean, McKinney, like you said, but may not become a star in the league, but he could end up being a really solid middle six guy, and that's really good to get in the draft. And you need everyone, as the Florida Panthers have shown. You need lines 1 through at least 3 lines of really talented players. So you need these guys in not just first rounders, and the second round usually has first round talent, but we'll see if any of them become top 10 talent, which has happened lately too. All right, to finish off the rest of the draft, I won't go through each round, but from 3 to 7, I mean, there's probably a few obvious ones as they kept falling. Peter, for steals, and these are the actual big steals, because usually late round picks beyond the third round don't hit. And if they do, just make it to the NHL and have like 15 goals, that's a pretty big steal. So who do you see from 3 to 7 that could be a steal?
I hate to say this because I just, did a petty comment about the Florida Panthers, but Arvid Drott at 192, a lot of talk about him possibly being a third, fourth, maybe possibly fifth rounder, but he just fits the mold as that player that could fit in right into their bottom 6 as a role player. He's got that intensity. He's got that drive. He's got great speed. He's got some good skill as well. So he's very average. Not one thing stands out, but he would be a very good complementary piece to a team's bottom six, and he has that kind of play style that fits the Florida Panthers very well, and it just meshes very well with the direction they want to go. Intense, he's not necessarily physical, but he's very engaging and pressures opponents to making mistakes. So to me, that kind of fits the bill of them or him being a potential great fit for them in the future, because he's got the size, because he's got that work ethic and mindset. So probably could have picked someone else. I probably could have picked, Cameron Schmidt as well. But I don't know. Arvid dropped that low as opposed to maybe a 4th or 5th round. Really good pickup for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, I was going to mention that when I saw him drafted by the Panthers, I'm like, that's a great pick. And well, I mean, they've had guys. I mean, it's not just the big trades they've made, and most of them are, but or free. I guess no, they've all been trades. But I mean, they have some drafted players in their lineup as well, and he could end up being even just a depth guy would be a good where he got picked. Chase, what about you for these actual big steals? Because these would be steals in the late round.
I cannot emphasize how much I think LJ Mooney will be looked upon as one of the biggest steals of the draft, especially if he pans out really well. 28 points in 26 games for the U.S. National Development Program. This guy's a stud. He's shorter, but he plays really strong. I think he could be a really good weapon for Montreal, who, again, is really good at developing undersized forwards. He's going to go to Minnesota, kind of like his cousin Cooley did, so that could be good for him. But jumping off the Mooney trade, because I've talked about him a lot. I liked what Dallas did with picking up Mons Goose in the 5th round. Yeah. I think that could be a solid goaltender for them in the future. I like him more than most goaltenders that were picked around that range. He played with the U18 Sweden team, put up a .917 save percentage, the junior team, and I think that's a solid pickup for them. I think especially, when he eventually develops, it might take longer because we all know goaltenders take longer to develop. It could be a very, very good tandem with Oettinger and him. We talked about the NHL now having a kind of 1A, 1B system and kind of going into that mindset. Goose could be a really good pickup for them. Also, now you have an otter and you have a goose. So that's
that's great. I was going to say, Dayton, I know you mentioned him as having one of the great names of this draft too, Mons Goose.
100%.
Yeah, it's great. Dayton, what about you for a steal?
I'm going to say 2, but they were drafted by the same team, so I think I can get away with it. Jan Chauvin and Will Sharp both going to the LA Kings in the 6th and 7th round. Massive steals. To me, those were 2nd-round picks. Will Sharp, I understand, not a popular 2nd-round pick. Not a lot of people had him there. I loved watching him. He is a brilliant skater. I thought he's really smart, made some good plays, and then got stuck on the Kelowna Rockets, who were abysmal this past season. Not as bad as the Moose Jaw Warriors, which is good, but nobody was. They were the worst team in the CHL. They were bad. The Kelowna Rock, he ended up with a -41 on, which is I think it was a team low. So there is some defensive concerns, but also the Rockets just couldn't generate wins. They were a rough team, and they're going to be doing a lot of work to be a Memorial Cup host, I think, this coming season. Mm-hmm. They've already started making some of those moves too. So he will pop off next season, almost guaranteed. Same thing with Jan Chauvin. He is just a really strong supporting player. I ranked him very highly. He was 46 on my list. He's got good size. He's got good movement. And he's going to the Sudbury Wolves next season. And so he could really jump into the forefront of the LA Kings prospects. Yeah, those guys should have been gone way earlier. And I'm really happy that Sharp did get picked, because my heart would have been broken if he fell. He was my last guy that I was like, somebody take him. So I think those are 2 really, really smart moves to get them. Maybe a higher risk, but super high reward.
I mean, that's where you do it. I mean, in the 6th and 7th round, take swings. I mean, take swings on skill. I mean, on undersized guys, whatever. You never know what could happen. And there are teams that have really actually built their team on these picks. Tampa Bay Lightning is a big one. They got so many guys that, yes, they do have their high-end picks too. I mean, they're not fully built on them, but a lot of their success has come on these lower rounds. So these aren't throwaway picks. I mean, you can be really successful with these guys in the 3 to 7. Cam Schmidt's my big one. I mean, I knew he was going to drop. I'm not sure I knew he was going to drop that much to being towards. It was in the 3rd round, right? So, and the Dallas Stars, they're known for taking pick. I just thought he'd be at least a 2nd round pick, and he started trending towards the 4th round, and I was like, he's going to be a 4th round pick. I sent a message to Dayton. I'm like, your bold prediction's going to be right. Didn't end up being. He almost did.
Almost. We'll take it.
It's very close to the 4th round, and yeah, he's going to be a steal for the Stars. Either he plays for them, or they trade him in a Rantanen deal. Which, I mean, that type of deal, it means he was a high end prospect. So, or high end young player. I guess he's not a prospect anymore. But yeah, it's Stankov, and now they got a new one in their system. All right, quickly, talking about these guys are undrafted. I mean, Peter, who do you find that went undrafted? I mean, they could get drafted next year. But for this draft, that you kind of like, why weren't they picked?
Well, I'm kind of glad that the Maple Leafs extended a camp invite to Owen Conrad, because I for sure thought that he should have been drafted, and the Maple Leafs could have drafted him with one of their last picks with that 7th rounder to try and avoid this. So I'm glad they're giving him an opportunity, because I like his two-way game. I thought there's a lot of upside there. But I'm going with Lev Katzen. This has been my guy for some time right now, and I'm a little surprised that he didn't get drafted. And no knock on Cameron Schmidt. He is 5'8", 161. Big reason why he dropped, but also a little bit of inconsistency. Katzen is 5'8", but he's also 176. He's 15 pounds heavier than Schmidt. Different kind of play style where he's a little bit more of a workhorse, in your face, very aggressive energizer bunny kind of player. And he was on a very bad Guelph Storm team, and he still managed to be over a point per game player and had 10 points for Canada at the U18 tournament, winning a gold medal. I don't understand how you can overlook that and say, oh, we're going to pass on you. There's not quite a whole lot there. I get the size is a concern, but then again, we all thought the same thing with Cameron Schmidt, and he went in the 3rd round. Even if Katzen was drafted in the 5th or 6th or 7th round, I would have been really happy, because there is a role for him. He is very intense, and he's a very driven player. I thought teams would have liked that, but I guess not. And I guess he has another opportunity to showcase that and prove them wrong at Penn State next year. But yeah, little surprised that he didn't get drafted this time around, because of that strong second half and play at the U18s that really should have put him on the map.
I really thought he was going to get drafted too. I mean, I really loved his game after the under 18s. And yeah, I mean, there's only 200 and what? 200 and what's my bad math here? It's 221?
224 players.
24. See, bad math. 224 picks. So that's not everyone gets drafted, but and he'll have another chance to impress, to maybe get drafted next year. Chase, what about you? Anyone that really stood out as being undrafted?
I think after Utah's development camp, I'm surprised that Nathan Lecomte didn't get drafted. Played in the Q this year, 49 points in 56 games. He's a center. Utah brought him into dev camp this past week, and he looked really good. Maybe it's because, he was a guy who wasn't drafted, and he was really fighting to press those. But I thought he looked really good in dev camp. He was speedy. He had good hands. He was a workhorse. And it wasn't just me who noticed him. It was all of us in Utah. My friend Brogan Houston, who also writes for Utah, said, do you see this player, Nathan Lecomte? I'm like, yeah, I've noticed him. Like I said, looks like a workhorse. there's a good reason that Bill Armstrong let him into Dev Camp, not just because he's in the queue and Bill Armstrong loves his queue players, but because he's actually a really good player. I'm excited to keep tabs on him, see what he does in the queue next year, and maybe he does get officially drafted by someone next year, or maybe the Mammoth decide to pick him up. Who knows?
You never know. It could end up being that they're like, oh, maybe we should have drafted this guy, and then they do it next year. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Dayton, anyone for you that stood out?
Yeah, I think we got to mention Luka Radivojevic. He should have been drafted.
Yeah,
that was one of the most skilled Slovakians coming into the draft this season or last season, and nobody picked him up because he's little. Little guys took a massive hit this year.
Yeah.
If you're curious, after the first round, which saw 5 guys under 6 foot drafted, only 25 more were picked between rounds 2 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
It's NHL's a copycat league. The Florida Panthers won with only 2 guys under 6 feet, both of which are highly effective depth players. One of which is named Brad Marchand. There was
ironic.
A definite bias this year. The bias was really evident this year, I think, and
very true.
A lot of guys suffered because of it. Lev Katzen, little guy. Luka Radivojevic, little guy. Both highly skilled players who should have an NHL team, and will now have to fight extra hard to prove that their size is not a detriment, which they've been doing their whole career anyways. I don't think either can argue that, because they're little, they're not quite as good as they could be. They're playing against bigger guys.
Yeah.
They should have been picked. Quick honorable mention is Reese Hamilton. Thought he should have been picked. He looked really good on a Regina Pats team who, like the Kelowna Rockets, were terrible. And he was one of the few bright spots. He kind of commanded the blue line from his position. But when you're stuck on a really bad team, sometimes it's hard to stand out and show all of the things you have going on.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, we all know. I mean, if anyone's watched Prospect Corner from the beginning, you all know I love undersized players. And unfortunately, a lot of the guys either weren't drafted or dropped quite a bit. And we mentioned 2 of them on the show already, Cam Schmidt, LJ Mooney. Both probably should have been drafted a lot higher, but ended up being lower round picks. And of course, we mentioned a few that were undrafted. So it's, hopefully next year the Panthers don't win the cup and we have a team that has a bunch of undersized guys win it. And we can get some undersized guys getting drafted higher. Probably won't happen anyway. Because
Montreal Canadiens host the Stanley Cup.
There you go. That's the perfect team to win the cup. Have Lane Hudson and Cole Caulfield dominate. And then they're like, we should be picking small guys. But yeah, we'll wait on that. All right, let's do a quick round the horn, I guess, on the teams that we cover, the draft classes. We're going to have in-depth episodes on the prospect pools throughout the summer. But just since it's fresh, Dayton, I'll start with you for the Senators. What did you think about their draft class? And you wrote, of course, a recap piece, so check that out if you want it big in written form. But quickly, what do you think about the draft class of Senators this year?
Initially, when it was made, I wasn't a huge fan, especially their first round pick, Logan Hensler. I didn't think they needed another right shot defenseman. But I think at 23rd overall, that's a good pickup. And looking at the rest of their guys, it's good pickups. I think they got really good value for where they were selecting. Blake Vanek is a solid swing in the 3rd round. Lucas Beckman, there's a goalie who I targeted for the Senators as a later round pick, and I think he could be a solid potential backup in the NHL. Dmitry Isayev, a little guy. He's 5'9". The Senators don't just take big guys. I was happy to see that. That was just nice to see. Bruno Idzan, the first Croatian ever selected. He's got some skill, and Andrei Trofimov, another goalie. Yeah, it was, I think, a really solid class. Not my favorite, but I think they got a lot of value for where they were selecting. And I will admit, Logan Hensler looks like a very solid player. I was just hoping for a forward. That's my own personal bias.
He's going to end up being a really good defenseman. I wrote his prospect profile, and I was really impressed with what I saw from him. So he's going to end up being a great pick for the Sens down the line. So, but yeah, I mean, we all talked about it the first round recap that probably would be nice forward, but Hensler's still a good pick for sure. All right, Chase, for the Mammoth, I mean, high end, of course, getting Desnoyers. We talked about him. What about the rest of the class? What did you think about it?
I think this was a solid draft class for the Mammoth, especially as they move towards making the playoffs and, obviously having the 4th overall pick with a team that's already, pretty much completed or have their prospects in the bank. I think that's solid. So Caleb Desnoyers obviously was we've already gone over him. He's fantastic. He fits Utah so well. I really like their 2nd round pick, Max Pasekta. Great kid. Super, super happy and go lucky. I think he did have kind of a down year in Portland. I think he can really pick it up. I think in dev camp, he was a very physical presence, especially in the scrimmage, and was a very offensive defenseman, especially once again in the scrimmage. He racked up 2 assists today. So I think he's someone to look out for. I think Stefan Hooch could be a good one. They picked him up in the 3rd round. Again, really good dev camp, in my opinion. Ludwig Johnson, actually, with their 6th round pick. I really like him. I think, like I've been saying, he really stood out in dev camp to me. Scored a goal today. I think getting him in the 6th round could be interesting. I still don't like what they did with Ivan Takhtachenko. I think they could have gotten him lower. I think there were better prospects around that time. I know, kind of the rule of thumb is that you pick at least one goaltender each draft, but I don't think the Mammoth really needed one, especially with Harabel coming up. And they have a lot of guys like Vialta and obviously Vejmelka. Who knows what happens to Ingram, but they also have Stauber. They just have so many goaltenders, and I don't think they needed another one. And like I said, and I've been saying, LJ Mooney was still available, and they did admit that he was on their watch list. So I think it was interesting that they picked up another goaltender. But other than that, I really was impressed with their draft class, especially, like I said, it's getting harder as their picks get lower. Obviously, this year was an exception because they had the 4th overall pick by the chance of luck. But I think Desnoyers, is the final big piece that they're going to need to get over the hump and make the playoffs. Whether it's this year or without Desnoyers or in the future with Desnoyers, I think in the very near future, he's going to be a big piece that puts them over the edge and maybe helps them go far in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and I think they're probably hoping this is their last high pick. I mean, even though it wasn't by being a bad team, at this time around at least, they don't want any high picks unless they do win a lottery again. But they want to be around that playoff bubble or in the playoffs. And they were around the bubble this year. All right, Peter, I know we mentioned the Maple Leafs as being an underwhelming draft class, but what do you think about it? I mean, you could end up having a good player from it.
Yeah, and I got it. Kind of like I said before with Dayton, there were a lot of players that they passed up on, but from my perspective, this is Mark Leach's first time as an amateur or leading the amateur scouting for the Maple Leafs. Architect for the Dallas Stars, where they got Ottinger, Robertson, a lot of those guys as well. So obviously their DNA comments of wanting to improve on their roster, it effectively went to the prospect pool as well. Tina Sula-Koblar, again, wasn't a big fan of it initially at first, where they could have had someone like Nathan Bem, Hayden Papanikis, who I was really high on as well when I wrote his profile, Luca Romano, Malte Vas. Probably would have taken those guys. But seeing the comments of, one of his development coaches saying that, he's mean. Koblar saying that he hates to lose in any way, shape, or form. He's a battler in front of the net. Kind of like a lesser skilled Matthew Nyes, but still provides that net front presence. Good skater, not the quickest of agility, but he has a long stride to break free. So I can understand the direction of going there. I really like the Tyler Hawkins pick. Really thought that could have been the 64th overall pick because there is a lot of upsides right there. I think there's a great opportunity for him to grow in Kingston this season or next season, whereas a bit more of an opportunity. Again, same thing with William Bell. And I really do like the Harry Nancy pick. Again, he's one of the younger players in the draft. Bad Owen Sound attack team where they had a losing record, made the postseason. So hopefully there's a chance for him to grow, get a little bit further along that development curve. But he is very young. There's a lot of room for growth there. William Bell said that he likes to be or mold his game after Tom Wilson. You know, that's music to Maple Leafs ears where they want a Tom Wilson type player to where he's physical, in your face, drives hard to the net, doesn't care who's in your way. Again, couple players I probably would have taken. Victor Klingzo was in that spot. Owen Griffin, how much I've talked about Owen Griffin. But they had that mindset of what they wanted to do. They wanted to be mean. They wanted to be competitive. They got the guys to do that. Even Ryan Fellinger, I thought was a really good defender for the Flint Firebirds this year. Even right now, even in development camp, I saw a clip of him talking to Jake Muzzin, who was a very effective two-way defender, shutdown style, and he's giving him pointers to improve his game. That gives me a little bit of hope right there. And Matthew Holakar, again, he fought at the first day of development camp as well. He dropped the gloves. You probably don't want to see that, but he's competitive. He has that fight and fire in him. So don't think much highly of that. But for the first 4 picks, good value. Probably would have taken other players, but it fits the direction of what the Maple Leafs wanted to do.
Like I say, it can end up being a really good draft class, and we don't know at this point. And it does. I mean, it's a theme. They seem to pick certain types of players, and it could end up working out later on. But we have to wait and be patient and see when that happens. Same kind of thing with the Canucks draft class. I mean, I wasn't underwhelmed. I actually loved their class. I actually made the big, bold prediction at the end of my recap piece that this could be the best draft in a long time of getting NHL players from it. Looking at Braden Coots, already know how great he is. I'm not going to really comment too much about him. He's already said because he's my favorite pick. But getting Alexei Medvedev in the second round, he could end up being a really good 1A, 1B type goaltender. Great season with the London Knights. Of course, he split the crease with them, but he is coming back to the Knights. He did confirm that he's not going to the NCAA. So he will be the starting goalie for the London Knights next season with Austin Elliott moving on. So, I mean, you're looking at he could have a really good season and it really bolsters the goaltending pool, which, I mean, Shelovs looks like he might be traded. He might end up being their top prospect goaltending-wise very soon. Kieran Durbin was a great pick, I think, as well. Matthew Lansing in the 7th round. I mean, I thought he's a guy that was going to go a lot higher. One theme I saw throughout the draft, though, was high motor, hardworking, high character guys, all 6 players. I'm going through their scouting reports and I'm saying and this is a word that just kept coming up, was high motor. So, I mean, you're looking at all these guys could end up being, I mean, maybe not high end. I mean, Braden Coots is probably the only one that's probably guaranteed as a top 6 guy, but all of them could make it to the NHL just because of their motor, work ethic, and be good 3rd, 4th liners. Might be shooting for the moon on that, but I just feel like work ethic goes a long way. And one comment just to finish what Braden Coots said, his dad said, the only thing you control is how hard you work. And that's very true. I mean, you work hard, stuff happens. And yes, so I mean, that was a great quote by him. So yeah, I loved the Canucks draft class. I think it's going to end up being a really good one down the line. And but we'll just have to wait and see on all these draft classes. But really impressive looking at them. All right. Well, that's another draft in the books, another season of Prospect Corner in the books as well, because we usually have our draft episode as our season finale. We might be taking a break here before we move on to our next season. But yeah, thanks Dayton, thanks Peter, thanks Chase for coming on. Of course, Dayton and Peter for joining me all this season for all the draft stuff, all of our prospect coverage as we went through. It's always fun times. And Chase for joining us on this episode. I believe you were on an episode during the season as well, but I can't remember. It was probably for the draft recap last year. But yeah, thanks Chase for joining us on this one. All right, well, with the draft in the books, make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We've got all of our, all the recaps went pretty much live in the first couple days. We waited on this episode because free agency was happening. So everyone's focused on that. So hopefully you're focused back on us and talking about finishing up the draft. But yeah, check everything out. We've got all the recaps, all the reactions. Draft guide is still live. That does not go dead. You can keep checking that out all throughout the season. All the prospect profiles are still there. Make sure you're checking all that out. And until our next season, our next episode, we will see you next time.